I froze, the stem of my champagne glass still pressed between my fingers, as the words tumbled out of Celine's mouth like they were nothing. "We've set our wedding date for September 21st, she said, her smile stretching so wide it almost looked rehearsed. "You know, the date you were going to use." The air in the restaurant felt heavier, thicker, as if every molecule had turned to lead. I blinked at her, my brain tripping over itself trying to process what she had just said. "That's my date," I managed, my voice tighter than I intended. Celine leaned back in her seat, tossing her perfect caramel blonde hair over her shoulder like she was on a magazine cover. "Well, it was your date. But since you and Evan postponed, I figured why let it go to waste." She gave a little shrug as if she'd just claimed the last donut in the break room, not hijacked the day I had been dreaming about since the moment Evan proposed. Across the table, my fiancé, my Evan, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Ava," he started, his deep voice low, careful, as if he was trying to soothe me before I even spoke. That was his tell. He knew this wasn't going to go down well. I set the champagne glass down a little too hard, the stemware giving a delicate, high-pitched chime. "You figured." My voice was calm, too calm, and that calmness was the only thing keeping me from flipping the table. "You knew I was still waiting for the venue to give me new availability. You knew I wanted that date." Celine waved a manicured hand. "Come on, Ava, you had to know the risk when you didn't book it right away after postponing. You said you needed time to sort things out." Her tone was mocking now, that passive-aggressive lilt she slipped into whenever she wanted to make me feel small. Evan cleared his throat. "It's not like we were married to that exact day." "Don't," I snapped, my eyes cutting to him. He closed his mouth instantly, but the damage was already there, etched into the look on his face. The look that told me he thought I was overreacting. But I wasn't overreacting. This wasn't just about a date. This was about her. The girl who'd been my best friend since we were 12. The one who swore we were more like sisters than anything. The one who had cried with me over heartbreaks, split 1,000 late-night pizzas, and been the first person I called when Evan proposed. And now she was sitting across from me in a silk blouse, sipping champagne, stealing my wedding day right out from under me like it was a clearance item on sale. I leaned forward, my nails biting into the linen tablecloth. "Tell me something, Celine. Did you already have the venue booked before you told me you were even engaged?" Her smile faltered just for a split second. Then she recovered. "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," I cut her off. My heart was pounding in my chest so hard it was making my temples throb. "You've been planning my wedding just with you in the white dress instead." Her lips curled into something halfway between a smirk and a sneer. "Don't be dramatic, Ava. It's just a date." I laughed then, short, sharp, and nothing like the laugh she'd heard from me before. "Just a date? You mean the day I picked because it was the anniversary of the night Evan and I met? The day you toasted to last year when I told you about it? That date?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me like she'd won something. And maybe she thought she had. I sat back, my hands suddenly cold. "Congratulations, Celine. You've outdone yourself this time." The waiter appeared then, smiling obliviously, ready to take dessert orders. I didn't even let him get the words out. "We're done," I said, standing up and grabbing my clutch. "Enjoy your wedding, Celine. I'm sure it'll be unforgettable." Evan stood quickly, muttering something about talking later, but I didn't wait. I walked out of that restaurant with my pulse thundering in my ears, the cool night air slapping my cheeks like it was trying to wake me up. I didn't cry. Not yet. Because something in me, something deep, something that had been stepped on one too many times, had started to burn. And I had a feeling Celine wasn't ready for the woman she'd just unleashed. By the time I reached my apartment, the night had settled into that uneasy quiet where the city seems to be holding its breath. My heels clicked sharply against the hardwood as I stepped inside, the sound echoing in the empty space like a reminder of just how alone I suddenly felt. I dropped my clutch on the kitchen counter, but my hand lingered on it. My phone was inside, buzzing every few minutes with incoming messages. I didn't need to look to know they were from Evan. Instead, I went straight to the cabinet above the sink, pulled down a bottle of Cabernet, and poured myself a glass big enough to qualify as irresponsible. My reflection in the microwave door caught my eye, hair still perfectly styled from the dinner, makeup unsmudged, but the expression, that was new. It wasn't the usual wounded look I'd had in past betrayals. No, this was colder, sharper. I took a sip, letting the wine coat my tongue, and finally dug my phone out. 5 missed calls. 12 texts. All from him. Ava, can we talk? Please don't be mad. It's not like she meant. You're overreacting. It's just a date. That one made me laugh out loud, the sound hollow and humorless. Just a date. The same phrase Celine had used. I wondered if they'd rehearsed it together. I scrolled past the rest without reading. I'd hear enough from him eventually. Instead, I tapped another name in my contacts. One I hadn't leaned on nearly enough lately. Savannah. Her voice on the other end was instant warmth. Ava? Hey, what's up? Tight. What happened? I sank into the couch, curling my legs under me. You know how I told you Evan and I were just waiting for the venue to confirm a new date after we postponed? Yeah, there was a pause. Don't tell me. Celine booked it. My voice cracked, but not from sadness. More like disbelief. She's getting married on September 21st. My date. My venue. The silence on the line was dangerous, like the calm before a storm. She what? Savannah's voice was low, lethal. Please tell me you're not joking, because if you are, it's not funny. I wish I was. We were at dinner. He just dropped it in conversation. Like she was telling me about a new nail color. Oh my God. There was a rustle like she was pacing. That woman has always been a vulture, Ava, but this is another level. And Evan just sat there. He said it was just a date. My lip curled. Didn't even look at me when he said it. Savannah let out a sharp laugh. Wow. So you've got a best friend who's a thief and a fiancé who's a spineless bystander. Congratulations, girl, you hit the jackpot. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel right now. Angry? Hurt? Stupid? All of the above, Savannah said without hesitation. But mostly you should feel done. The word landed heavy. Done. I thought about the years Celine and I had spent tangled in each other's lives. Sleepovers, shared heartbreaks, moving to the city together. And I thought about Evan. About the day he proposed under the string lights in our backyard. About how I'd said yes without hesitation. I also thought about every time I'd caught them exchanging some private joke I wasn't in on. The way Celine's compliments to him always bordered on a little too intimate. I'd brushed it off. Chosen not to see it. Savannah. My voice was quieter now. What if this wasn't spur of the moment? What if she's been planning this since the minute I postponed? Oh, honey, she said, her tone soft but certain. I would bet my rent she's been planning this for a lot longer than that. I let the words sink in. The betrayal wasn't a sudden cut. It was a slow knife, slid in carefully over years. Savannah broke the silence. You want me to come over? I can bring ice cream and bourbon. We'll plot her social downfall. A laugh escaped me, genuine this time. Tempting. But I think I need to sit with this for a minute. Alone. All right, she said reluctantly. But promise me something, Ava. Don't you dare let them make you feel like you've lost. They haven't seen what you can do when you're mad. We hung up, but her words kept playing in my head. I looked around my apartment, the space Evan and I had chosen together, decorated together, lived in together. My gaze drifted to the corner where a stack of unopened wedding boxes still sat, wrapped in pristine white paper. Registry gifts. A reminder of a day that was supposed to belong to me. Something in my chest shifted, small but enough to notice. They thought I'd just roll over. They thought I'd cry quietly in the corner while they danced on my date. But they'd forgotten something. I was no stranger to losing things. And I'd learned a long time ago, when you've got nothing left to lose, you're free to do anything. And I was just starting to decide what anything was going to look like. He was sitting in the dark when I opened the door. The only light in the apartment was the sliver of street lamp sneaking through the blinds, cutting Evan's figure into slices of shadow and shine. His suit jacket was slung over the back of a chair, his sleeves rolled to the elbow like he'd been preparing for hard work but never started. He didn't stand. He just looked at me, jaw tight, hands folded like he was in a confessional. Don't turn on the lights, he said quietly. I set my keys in the ceramic dish by the door with a clatter that sounded too loud in the hush. I wasn't going to, I said, and I didn't recognize my own voice. How flat it was, how steady. You've already lit enough fires for one night. He flinched. Ava. Why did you say it? I cut in. Why did you sit there and say, it's just a date, while Celine stole my wedding out from under me? He rubbed a hand over his face, the tendons in his forearm flexing. I was trying to keep you from spiraling. Into what? I stepped closer. I could smell the restaurant on him, garlic, wine, something seared. Reality. He exhaled and stared at the floor. I didn't know she was going to tell you like that. Oh. My laugh was quick and mean. You wanted her to send a save the date to my mailbox instead? Don't, he said, a warning flickering in his eyes. I'm not your enemy. Then tell me the truth, I said, and I felt my backbone click into place like a lock finally catching. When did you find out? He hesitated. Too long. 2 weeks ago, he said. My mouth went dry. 2 weeks. She called me, he added, and there it was, like a needle under the nail. Said she was thinking of the 21st and wanted to make sure we were really off it. I stood there in my doorway with the wind sneaking through the cracks and thought of all the nights in the past 2 weeks. The pizza we ordered, the show we half-watched, the lazy Sunday morning we spent in bed, me tracing the veins in his wrist with my fingertip, him promising we'd figure out a new date together. And you didn't tell me because? Because you'd make it a thing. He spread his hands. Because every detail becomes a hill to die on with you lately. The flowers, the playlist, the seating chart. The date, I whispered. He shut his mouth. I walked past him, crossing to the kitchen. The stack of unopened wedding gifts loomed like a white mountain. I opened a drawer and pulled out the folder I kept for wedding stuff. Contracts, printouts, a worn letterhead from Meadowlark House, the venue I'd cried over like it was a person. I placed the folder on the table, flipped it open, and slid out a highlighted sheet. Our original email thread with the venue manager, Claire. The line I'd highlighted weeks ago when I first picked the date glowed even in the dim light. We're thrilled to place a soft hold on September 21st for Ava and Evan until your final deposit clears. I tapped the page. I picked that date on the anniversary of when we met in Nashville. You said it was fate. You toasted to it. And then you let her take it. I didn't let. He stopped when he saw my face. Fine. I didn't stop it. There's a difference. Not a meaningful one, I said. He leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling like answers were written up there. I thought we were postponing indefinitely. You said you needed time. You said you weren't sure. I wasn't sure about you, I said, and the words felt clean like pulling a splinter. Not the date. He looked at me, then really looked, and I watched the truth land. His gaze flicked to the folder. What is this? He asked, pointing at another sheet peeking out. My logistics spreadsheet, tabs color-coded, vendor contacts stacked like a small army. Pie brain, I said. On paper. He reached for it, but I pulled it out of his grasp. No. Something in his expression shifted, shame maybe. Or fear that shame would become proof. Ava. Can I just be honest without you biting my head off? Try me. He swallowed. Celine's not. She's not trying to hurt you. Interesting hypothesis, I said. What are your supporting facts? He stared at his hands. She called because she was scared. She thinks Henry's going to bail. Henry. I blinked. Who's Henry? Her fiancé, he said. The finance guy with the bow ties. He came to Friendsgiving last year. Oh. Henry, I said, acid curling in my throat. The human spreadsheet with opinions about Pinot. He's under pressure at work, there was this compliance audit and, never mind. The point is, she said she needed something to feel solid and the 21st was open and I told her it was okay. You gave her my anchor, I said. To stop her from spinning. He winced. When you say it like that. There isn't another way to say it. We sat in silence long enough that a siren wailed 3 blocks away, rose, dipped, and vanished. My phone buzzed in my bag on the counter. I didn't move. Can I tell you something else? Evan said. God, I muttered. We're doing confessions now. I think Celine thought she was helping, he said, cheeks flushing even in the blue light. She said if you saw that someone else could use the date, you might realize it's not sacred. She's right, I said, standing so my chair scraped. I picked up the folder and held it like a shield. It isn't sacred. But not because of her. Because of you. I started toward the hallway, but he stood, blocking me. Don't walk away, he said. Please. Move, I said evenly. Talk to me like I'm your partner. Act like one, I said. He stepped aside. I made it 2 steps before he added, too casually, she also asked for the contact list. I stopped. What? He was already regretting it. I could hear it in the way the words got slower. Your vendor list. She said it would save her time. My fingers tightened around the manila folder. And you gave it to her. He didn't answer. I turned back slowly. Evan. He rubbed his eyes. I forwarded the email chain with Claire at Meadowlark so she could introduce herself. That's it. Just the venue chain, I repeated. And the florist, he admitted. And the band. And the cake baker, because you made that big deal about the lemon rosemary one and she wanted to try it. The room tilted. I put a hand on the wall to steady myself. You gave her my wedding, I said softly. Piece by piece. He took a step toward me but thought better of it halfway. I didn't think it mattered to you anymore, Ava. You've been somewhere else. I don't know where, but not with me. Maybe I've been trying to pry your fingers off my life for months, I said. Maybe Celine wasn't the only one taking things from me. He sat back down like someone cut his strings. So what now? He asked, voice small. I lifted my chin. Now I decide which of you I'm done with first. He watched me, the muscles in his jaw working like he was chewing on a confession he couldn't swallow. Then, in a voice so careful it set my teeth on edge, he said, There's one more thing. Of course there is, I sighed. He glanced at the hallway leading to our bedroom, then back to me. Celine asked me to check the shared drive for ideas. I replayed the sentence, trying to find the part that wasn't betrayal. It all came up red. What shared drive? Our wedding drive, he said. The one with the mood boards, your dress inspo, the ceremony readings, the playlists, the vows. My stomach went cold. You let her in? No, he said quickly, hands up. No, I never gave her access. I swear. She asked me to send a few screenshots and you did. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. That's theft, I said. Not shoplifting a lipstick. Stealing a life. Ava, he said, standing again, desperate now. It's not like she's going to use your vows. I stared at him. Do you hear yourself? He closed his eyes. I'm sorry. For which part? I asked. The part where you kept secrets, the part where you handed over my work, or the part where you decided I'd be too dramatic to handle the truth? He opened his eyes. All of it. I let the quiet stretch until it hurt. Then I walked past him down the hall to our bedroom. The bed was perfectly made, a habit we'd picked up during that self-improvement wave last spring when we were going to be people who ran 5 Burmese chots and bought farmers market kale. I went to the top dresser drawer and pulled out the small cedar box where I kept things that mattered. Ticket stubs, a dried magnolia petal from a trip to Charleston, the matchbook from the night we met. And on top, in its velvet cradle, my engagement ring. I brought the box back to the kitchen and set it on the table. Evan's eyes flicked to it like it was a weapon. Don't, he said, voice catching. Relax, I said, opening the lid. I slipped the ring off and set it on its blue cushion. The diamond, small, chosen because I wanted something modest and classic, caught the sliver of streetlight and flared for a heartbeat. I'm not throwing it. I'm not hurling it into traffic. I'm putting it somewhere safe until I decide if it ever goes back on. He exhaled, a mix of relief and defeat that made me want to scream. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it until it buzzed a second time, a third. Finally, I picked it up, ready to silence the world, and froze when I saw the preview. Claire. Meadowlark House. Hi Celine and Evan. So glad we could finalize details. As discussed, we'll incorporate the string lights and wildflower arch Ava loved. Deposit received. See you September 21st. The blood drained from my face so fast I had to grip the edge of the table not to sway. Evan saw it. What? He asked. What is it? I turned the screen toward him. He went even paler than me. I didn't, he started. I didn't know she looped me in on that. You didn't know, I repeated, the phrase cracking like ice. Of course you didn't. Another buzz. A second email slid into view, this one from a different vendor. Betty's Bakes. Celine, confirmed on the lemon rosemary with honey buttercream, just like Ava's notes. We'll mock up the pressed wildflower design Ava pinned. We'll credit her inspiration on our Insta. A laugh ripped its way out of me before I could stop it. It sounded a little unhinged. They're going to credit me, I said. How generous. Ava. I set the phone down carefully like it might explode. Get out, I said. He blinked. What? Take your jacket, I said, my voice calm, precise. Take your keys. Take your justifications. And get out. Ava, where am I supposed to? I don't care, I said simply. Hotel. Couch. Celine's sainted guest room. Find out if she matches her white towels to her white heart. He stood there for a heartbeat too long, and for a second I imagined what it would feel like if he fought for us right now, if he fell to his knees and told me none of it mattered except me. He didn't. He reached for his jacket in silence. At the door he paused. Can I call you tomorrow? No, I said. He nodded, a man taking a verdict he expected but hoped to appeal. The door clicked shut behind him. The apartment swallowed the sound and gave me back my breathing. I slid into a chair and stared at the emails still glowing on my phone like a dare. Wildflower arch string lights. Lemon rosemary. My date. My story. My hands. Fine. If they wanted my blueprint so badly, they could live with what I built on top of it. I opened a new note and typed, plan. Then another line. Not destruction, revelation. I began a list, fingers flying, the old muscle memory of strategy kicking in like a long-forgotten song. Vendors I still had leverage with. Friends in common who knew the truth. Ways to hold a mirror up to Celine without saying a word. The legalities of deposits in my name. The photo rights I owned, mood boards, original designs. The more I wrote, the quieter my heartbeat became. And then my screen lit again with a name I hadn't expected. Henry. I stared at the preview. Hi Ava. We've never texted, but I think we should talk about Celine. There are things you don't know. I didn't breathe for 5 seconds. Then I smiled. Slow, sharp, inevitable. Okay Henry, I whispered to the empty apartment. Let's talk. Henry's message sat there on my screen like a lit match on dry grass. We'd met maybe twice. Once at Friendsgiving where he wore a mustard-colored sweater and talked about wine tannins for 20 minutes. And once in passing at a rooftop bar when Celine dragged him over to meet my other half of trouble. He'd been polite, reserved, the kind of man who studied a menu like it was a contract. I had no idea why he'd be texting me now. I typed back before I could overthink it. What kind of things? The 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, then came back. Not over text. Can we meet? I hesitated. Every instinct told me to tread carefully. Celine would smell any unusual movement between me and Henry like a shark to blood. But another part of me, the part that had been gutted by dinner tonight, was already grabbing my coat. Tomorrow morning. Lark and Finch Cafe. 10 a.m. I sent. He replied instantly. I'll be there. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying the scene at the restaurant, the emails from the vendors, Evan's voice saying, it's just a date. I kept seeing Celine's face, that slight, smug curve of her lips, as if she'd been waiting years for this moment. By the time the sun cracked over the buildings outside my window, I was already up, showered, and pacing. I picked my outfit with the precision of a general going into battle. Black turtleneck, dark jeans, boots sharp enough to be a warning. No makeup except for a swipe of deep red lipstick. If Celine somehow heard about this meeting, I wanted her to picture me looking like I didn't have time for heartbreak. The Lark and Finch smelled like espresso and warm bread when I walked in. I spotted Henry immediately, sitting in a corner booth, hands wrapped around a mug like he was trying to keep them still. His bow tie was gone, just a plain navy sweater over a collared shirt. He looked less polished than I remembered and a little tired. Ava, he said, standing halfway before sitting back down. Thanks for coming. I'm not sure why I did, I admitted, sliding into the booth. So I hope you make this worth my time. He nodded, leaning in. It's about Celine. And Evan. The way he paired their names sent a cold shiver down my spine. Go on. He looked around, making sure no one was listening. I think they've been in contact a lot longer than you think. I didn't blink. Define a lot longer. He exhaled through his nose. I found texts. Not romantic exactly, at least not all of them. But planning. Details. Jokes about you. About me. I kept my voice steady. How far back? He hesitated. 7 months. My stomach dropped, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing it. And you're telling me this now because? Because she's different lately, he said. More secretive. More obsessed. And last week she slipped up and said something about how Evan always comes through in a pinch. I asked her what she meant and she brushed it off. But it's been gnawing at me. The server came by with my coffee. I wrapped my hands around it, letting the heat anchor me. You're not exactly news to me, Henry. I already know she stole my date, my venue, my vendors. He cut me off. That's not all. She's planning to use your vows. For a second, all I heard was the hum of the espresso machine. My vows? I repeated. He nodded grimly. She showed me a page, handwritten. Said she found it in a file Evan shared. She said they were too beautiful to waste. A hot metallic taste filled my mouth. Too beautiful to waste, I said slowly, each word tasting worse than the last. Henry's jaw tightened. I don't like her. I don't like this wedding. And I don't know what's going on between her and Evan, but it's not clean. I leaned back, studying him. So what are you proposing? We join forces? Expose them together. He glanced toward the window, then back at me. I'm saying, maybe there's a way to make them regret this. Publicly. Something in his tone told me he'd been thinking about this for a while. What's in it for you? I asked. He didn't hesitate. An out. If this wedding goes down in flames, I can walk away without looking like the villain. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness fitting the moment. You're willing to help me burn it down. He met my gaze. If you're willing to get your hands dirty. I considered him for a long moment. On the surface, Henry was still that finance guy with tidy hair and a cautious smile. But there was something sharper underneath. Something that might match the edge forming in me. Finally, I set my mug down. All right. But we don't burn it. Not in the way you're thinking. He tilted his head. Then what? We let them build it, I said. We let them put every perfect stolen piece in place. And then we make sure everyone sees exactly where it came from. A slow smile spread across his face. You want revelation. Not destruction, I confirmed. Revelation. Henry sat back, nodding. I can work with that. For the first time since dinner last night, I felt my pulse steady. I wasn't flailing anymore. I wasn't waiting to see what they'd take next. I was planning how to take it back. Meadowlark House smelled like cut grass and old money. The morning mist still clung to the hydrangeas as I walked up the brick path, my boots ticking like a metronome. Claire, the venue manager with the precise bob and a calendar brain, met me at the door with a professional smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ava, she said. This is unexpected. I figured an email would get lost in the flurry, I replied, stepping into the foyer. Sunlight laid a lattice of window panes across the floor, and for a second my chest ached. I'd pictured this place 1,000 times with my name on the welcome sign. Can we talk in your office? We moved through a hallway lined with black and white photos of meadow weddings past. Laughing brides, slanted sunsets, ribboned bouquets dangling from tired hands. Claire closed her office door behind us with a soft click, then perched at her desk like a stork. What can I do for you? She asked. I placed a neat stack of papers on her blotter. My original soft-hold email, a copy of the vendor pitch deck I'd designed for the wildflower arch, and front and center, the invoice showing my initial design retainer to their in-house stylist. Paid by me. Weeks ago. I'm not here to cause a scene, I said. I'm here to clarify where credit is due. Claire's gaze flicked over the papers. Our contract is with another party now. I know, I said evenly. And I'm not contesting the booking. I tapped the invoice with one fingernail. But these elements, string lights through the poplars, the pressed wildflower aisle markers, the placement of the ceremony on the western lawn at golden hour, those are my designs. I created them. I paid to develop them. If you use them for another client, I'm entitled to creative credit. Her brows ticked up. You're claiming design authorship on a wedding concept. On this wedding concept, I said, sliding a second sheet across. A time-stamped PDF export of my mood boards and layout drawings, emailed to myself last month and registered this morning with a basic copyright form because Savannah knew a lawyer who owed her a favor. Date stamped. Scope noted. I'm not asking you to pull anything. I'm asking you to add one sentence to your program and send one line to your vendors. I handed her a half-page, pre-formatted ceremony concept and original layout by Ava Morgan. Used with permission. Claire sat back. For a heartbeat she studied me like I was a new species. Not the sobbing abandoned bride she expected, but something more calibrated. Finally she said, "You know you don't own the idea of string lights." "Of course not," I agreed. "I own my arrangement, my sequencing, my written work. And I can make things very, very public if people insist on pretending otherwise. But I'd rather we simply attribute." She glanced at the window, then back at me, some calculation clicking into place. "I'll circulate the credit line to our stylist and the printer," she said. "And the florist. Betty's bakes too," I added. "They're planning a pressed wildflower motif I sketched." Claire's mouth twitched. "They CC'd you by mistake?" "They thought their enthusiasm would flatter me." I smiled without warmth. "It didn't." She reached for a pen, scrawled notes. "Anything else?" "Yes," I said, standing. "Please confirm in writing that the 21st is now permanently associated with the Morgan plan in your internal files. Call it housekeeping." She looked surprised, then amused. "You want your name in our back-end system." "I want what already exists," I corrected. "Order rarely resurfaces unless it has a label. Give mine one." Claire held my gaze for a beat, then nodded once. "You'll have an email by end of day." "Appreciated." When I stepped outside, the mist had burned off, leaving the lawn washed in new light. For a moment I stood at the edge of the slate steps and imagined the aisle they'd build from my drawings. I let the ache come and go like a wave. Then I pulled out my phone. A new message from Henry waited. "She's giddy. Thinks the universe opened a door. Rehearsal set for the 18th. Bridal shower next Saturday at her aunt's in Scarsdale. Invite incoming. Will you go?" "Absolutely," I typed. "But first, florist." Posy and Thread was a narrow shop in the West Village that always smelled like eucalyptus and gossip. A bell chimed when I pushed the door, and a woman with copper hair popped up from behind a tower of peonies. "Back so soon?" Rowan asked. We'd spent an hour together last month debating whether Cosmos read charming or chaotic. I'd liked her immediately. Iron backbone, velvet voice. "Different errand," I said, and laid my folder on her counter like a badge. Rowan scanned the top sheet, then whistled low. "Oof. That's messy." "I don't want to make it messy, I said. "I want it clean. Here's a credit line to add to your event caption and the card on the bouquet table. And one more request. If anyone asks for my personal notes, you decline and CC me." Rowan's eyes warmed. "They asked for your notes." "They asked for everything," I said softly. "They called it efficiency." She reached for a pen and wrote my name on a sticky note, stuck it to the register, then drew a tiny crown beside it. "Done," she said. "And for what it's worth, we all talk. Word gets around." "Let it," I said. "Let it get everywhere." When I stepped back onto the sidewalk, Savannah called. "Report," she said. "No hello." "Venue and florist on credit lock," I said. "Baker next. Then band." "Have I told you lately that you're terrifying?" Her voice was gleeful. "Because you're terrifying." "I'm just labeling files," I said. "People respect labels. People also respect spectacle," she said. "Which brings me to step 2, we need a stage." Conveniently, Celine is throwing herself one, her bridal shower. "I'm going," I said. "You're going to walk into that house and smile like a shark," Savannah purred. "And when she tries to parade your ideas in front of all the women who taught her how to sharpen her knives, you'll be the one holding the carving set." My phone buzzed again, another email. Betty's Bakes had replied. "Happy to add the credit line. Also, we realized the pressed wildflower technique was pioneered by our design partner who would love to meet you. She's hosting a small gallery night Friday featuring original cake design sketches. If you come, we'll comp your ticket." Winky face, Betty. I grinned. Baker just invited me to headline without knowing it. "Say yes," Savannah said immediately. "You'll charm the apron off every vendor in a 10-mile radius. Plant your flag." "Already RSVP'd," I said, typing as we spoke. Savannah hummed in pleasure. "All right, General. Anything from Henry?" "Feeding me intel like a sous chef," I said. "He's scared and motivated. It's a powerful combo." "Do we trust him?" "We trust his self-preservation," I said. "It points in our direction for now." "Fine," she said. "One last thing, legal. You ready to be boring?" "I filed the copyright," I said. "Vows, boards, layouts. They're small bore protections, but they'll make a noise if someone tries to sell my heart at retail. Savannah was silent for a beat. When she spoke, her voice had the softness she kept for late nights and bruised feelings. "How are you?" I looked at my reflection in the shop window, the red mouth, the steady eyes. "Hungry," I said. "Not for blood. For symmetry." "God, I love when you get poetic," she said, swallowing a laugh. "Text me after the cake thing. I want details." Betty's bakes turned out to be less bakery, more atelier. Marble surfaces, framed sketches, a wall of sugar flowers that looked stolen from a botanical garden. The gallery night was crowded with people who used phrases like structure and line and negative space to describe frosting. I found it comforting. Art people understood attribution. Betty herself was tiny and kinetic with smile lines like parenthesis. She recognized me from across the room and sailed over, grabbing both my hands. "Ava, I'm obsessed with your pressed wildflower concept," she sang. "And your rhythm notes on the cutting. You think like a director." "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week," I admitted. She tugged me toward a long table covered in portfolios. Would you be willing to add your board to our display tonight?" she asked in a rush. "We love showing process and your annotations are chef's kiss." I blinked. "You want to show my actual layout?" "With your name," she said. "Big as the sun. If the client uses it, people should know whose brain birthed it." I laughed then, sudden and bright. "You have no idea how perfect your timing is." We pinned my board beside a watercolor of wildflower petals. Betty stuck a placard beneath it with my name in neat script. I watched strangers stop, read, and nod. The room buzzed around me and something in my chest loosened. My phone vibrated. "Henry, she's bragging about the cake design. Called it her vision." I might have asked what inspired her. She said, "I can't reveal all my secrets." "She'll reveal them soon," I typed. "I'm helping." I slipped my phone away and found the band's manager by the coffee urn. Theo, salt and pepper hair, wry mouth. I introduced myself, mentioned the date, the couple, the original request for Sunset Waltz as a first dance. My request, cribbed and recycled. Theo remembered my email chain instantly. "We loved your set list," he said. "Tight arcs, good energy." "I'm glad," I said. "I'm not asking you to change anything. Just a shout out. When you post clips from the event, tag me as creator of the original program." "Done," he said without hesitation. "Credit matters." "More than you know," I murmured. I just accepted a flute of sparkling something when another text flashed. "Evan, can we talk? Please." I stared at it for a long beat, then tucked the phone away. He could wait. Patience wasn't his sport. It would become mine. By the time I left the atelier, the city had dipped into velvet. I walked home along streets that smelled like rain and basil, and I realized I was smiling. Not because I'd won, no. I wasn't racing them to a finish line they'd moved. I was laying a floor under my feet. At my building door I paused. A courier stood on the stoop, boxes stacked in his arms. "Ava Morgan?" he asked. "That's me." He handed me a cream envelope and slid the boxes onto the step. "From Scarsdale," he said. "They wanted to make sure you got it tonight." I knew what it was before I broke the seal. Heavy cardstock, engraved wreath, the kind of taste that thinks it's timeless because it never risks. "Please join us for a bridal shower honoring Celine Hart." Below, in tasteful italic, "Saturday, 2 p.m. champagne and confections." A small card fluttered out behind it. "Theme wildflowers." I laughed, alone on the stoop, until my eyes watered. Inside the envelope's pocket I found place cards, blank, but printed with watercolor blooms that looked suspiciously like the ones on my board. And a request. "Please bring a recipe card with a dish that symbolizes love to you. Hostess will compile into a keepsake for the bride." Perfect. I texted Savannah a photo. She responded with a string of knife emojis. "Then, we doing this?" "Well, we're doing it," I typed. "And we're bringing a dish." "What dish?" she asked. I looked at the recipe card, at the watercolor flowers, at my name printed on a dozen vendor credit lines, already echoing through inboxes and back rooms. I thought of vows copied by a woman who'd never earned the words she wanted to wear. Something simple, I wrote. Something honest. Something that reads like a mirror. I set the invitation on my kitchen counter, pulled my cedar box toward me, and took out the notebook where I'd written my first draft vows in pencil. I tore a clean page from the back and began in a hand that did not shake. Recipe, lemon rosemary truth. Step 1. Zest what's yours. Keep the bright parts. Don't apologize for the bite. Step 2. Add heat. Let the sugar blister into something that sticks. Step 3. Pour over the structure you built yourself and let it set in the light. When I was done, I dated the bottom corner. Then I photographed it and emailed it to myself with a subject line that made me smile. Exhibit A. The week before the bridal shower felt like standing at the top of a roller coaster. Slow clink, clink, clink toward something inevitable. Every day brought another piece of the picture into focus, and every piece came from someone who didn't even realize they were helping me. Henry texted photos of the gift registry. Look familiar? Nearly half the items were straight from mine. Same copper cookware, same glass decanter set, same linen napkins with the stitched wildflower motif I'd picked after a glass of wine and too much Pinterest. Savannah sent me screenshots from social media. Guess who just posted a story from Meadowlark's lawn? It was Celine, twirling in the exact spot I'd chosen for my golden hour vows. Her caption is syrupy. Can't wait to say I do here. I didn't reply. I just added it to the growing folder on my desktop titled Exhibit. Friday afternoon, I met Savannah at her apartment to plan our gift. She opened the door with a grin and a bottle of Prosecco. All right, she said, popping the cork like we were celebrating early. Walk me through tomorrow. I set my tote bag on the counter and pulled out the invitation, the watercolor blooms, the recipe card. We're playing nice. At first. Her eyebrows lifted. Define nice. I'm bringing the lemon rosemary cake. She snorted into her glass. Oh, that's evil. It's not evil if it's mine, I said. And I'm writing the recipe exactly the way I drafted it last night. Step by step, but in a way that anyone with a brain, and especially Celine, will know it's aimed straight at her. Savannah clinked her glass against mine. Passive-aggressive baking. I respect it. That night I baked. My kitchen smelled like sunshine and pine, the citrus cutting through the quiet. As the cake cooled, I slipped the handwritten recipe into an envelope, sealing it with a tiny pressed wildflower. The same kind Betty's Bakes was preparing to press into her wedding cake. I packed it all into a white box tied with gold ribbon. Elegant, understated. Dangerous only if you knew what to look for. Saturday arrived bright and cloudless, the kind of day that makes bad people think the universe approves of them. Savannah drove, her old convertible, hair whipping in the wind, music loud enough to drown out my nerves. Scarsdale was every inch the postcard suburb. Manicured lawns, white shutters, brick walkways that led to bigger brick houses. Celine's aunt's place was no exception. By the time we pulled up, the driveway was already lined with gleaming SUVs and cars that cost more than my first apartment. We stepped inside to the scent of peonies and expensive perfume. Women in pastel dresses floated through the rooms, balancing champagne flutes and small talk. At the far end of the living room, Celine stood in a pale yellow sundress, her hair in effortless waves, surrounded by a cluster of admirers. Her eyes flicked toward me. A flicker, surprise, annoyance, passed before she smiled like she'd been expecting me all along. Ava, she called, her voice warm enough to fool the untrained ear. You made it. Savannah leaned in and whispered, smile like you just swallowed her canary. I did. We exchanged air kisses, her perfume cloying and sharp. I brought something for you, I said, holding out the box. She took it, lifting the lid just enough to see the cake inside. Oh wow, she said, the edges of her smile tightening. This looks familiar. It should, I said sweetly. It's the original. Her jaw twitched. We'll have to serve it later. I included the recipe, I added, my voice low enough for only her to hear. For your keepsake book. Her fingers tightened around the box. How thoughtful. I walked away before she could answer, Savannah following like my shadow. The gift table was piled high with ribbon packages and cream envelopes. I slipped mine in the center, making sure the pressed flower caught the light. As the party moved on, games, toasts, stories about how Celine always knew what she wanted. I played the role of polite guest. I laughed at appropriate moments, clinked glasses when asked, let the champagne fizz on my tongue without drinking much of it. All the while I could feel her watching me from across the room. When it was time for the recipe reveal, her aunt called everyone to gather. Celine sat in the center, flipping through each card and reading them aloud. Heart-shaped cookies from one friend, a family lasagna from another, chocolate truffles from her college roommate. Then she picked up mine. Her eyes scanned the page. I watched the exact moment she realized what it said. Her voice caught on the first line. Zest, what's yours? Keep the bright parts. Don't apologize for the bite. A couple of women chuckled at the wording, but she kept reading, her tone flattening. Add heat. Let the sugar blister into something that sticks. By the last line, pour over the structure you built yourself and let it set in the light. The room was quiet. She closed the card slowly, set it on her lap and looked right at me. I smiled. We didn't speak again during the shower, but I caught her glancing toward me more than once, her easy hostess act slipping at the edges. Henry had been right, she hated not knowing exactly how much I knew. As Savannah and I walked back to the car, she let out a low whistle. That was surgical. I buckled my seatbelt, still watching the front door. Celine stood there, framed by the white columns, the gold ribbon from my cake box twisted between her fingers. That was the appetizer, I said. Now we serve the main course. Henry's message came through the night after the shower, just as I was settling into bed. He's rattled. Been pacing around the condo since you left. Keeps asking if anyone saw your little stunt. I told her it was just a recipe. I typed back, good. Let her stew. He replied almost instantly. She moved the rehearsal to the 17th. Wants everything locked down before the weekend. I stared at the screen, already feeling the next step take shape in my mind. If she wanted everything locked down, all I had to do was jiggle the hinges until people started wondering what was inside. Over the next 3 days, Henry and I worked quietly, each on our own side of the enemy camp. He fed me rehearsal dinner seating charts, hair and makeup schedules, vendor confirmations. I fed him my plan piece by piece. The key wasn't sabotage. It was saturation. Let enough truth slip into the right ears and it would spread on its own. Savannah called it whisper leverage. You're not the one shouting, she said, pouring herself coffee while we went over the list. You're just the first gust of wind. The rest is gossip doing what gossip does best. Step 1, the band. Theo was more than willing to help. You want me to mention you in the program introduction? He asked when I called. Better, I said. When you introduce their first dance, tell the story of how the song choice came from my original request. Keep it light but make it clear. No malice, just history. Theo chuckled. History I can do. Step 2, the florist. Rowan agreed to place a small placard on the reception entry arrangement. Nothing flashy, just my name in discreet lettering beneath original arrangement concept by. Anyone who stopped to admire it would see me before they saw her. Step 3, the baker. Betty was almost gleeful when I suggested the cake display include a design inspiration card with my wildflower sketch. Honey, I'll laminate it, she said. By Wednesday the net was ready. All I needed was one more piece, the vows. I knew she had them. I knew Evan had given them to her. What I didn't know was whether she intended to use them word for word, or just to cannibalize the best lines. That's where Henry came in. Thursday evening he called. She's been practicing something, he said, voice low. Reading it in front of the mirror when she thinks I'm not around. Is it mine? I asked. I don't know every word of yours, he said carefully, but I recognize the cadence. It doesn't sound like her. My stomach twisted, not with heartbreak this time but with a cold, precise anger. I need you to get a copy. That's risky, he said. So is marrying her, I replied. Pick your danger. Friday morning a PDF arrived in my inbox. No subject line. Just the file. I opened it. There they were. My vows nearly untouched. Only my name replaced with his, only the pronouns changed. Even the little asides in parentheses were intact. I read them twice, my chest tightening, not because she'd stolen them but because they still sounded like me. Like the version of me that had believed in both of them. I forwarded the file to Savannah with one line. We're ready. Saturday, the day before the rehearsal, I met Henry in a quiet corner of a Tribeca cafe. She's convinced she's got you out of the picture, he said, sliding into the booth. Even bragged to her maid of honor that you'll be too embarrassed to show your face at the wedding. Perfect, I said, stirring my coffee. The best audience is the one that thinks it's safe. Henry studied me for a moment. You know, When this is over, she's going to hate you more than anyone she's ever met. I met his gaze. Good. That means she'll never forget me. We went over the final timing. Henry would keep her distracted during the vendor walkthrough. Savannah would be at the reception space by chance, chatting up guests she knew and dropping the tiniest hints about where certain ideas had come from. Betty, Rowan, and Theo already had their cues. Me. I'd be waiting until the exact right moment to walk in. Not early enough to be brushed off. Not late enough to miss the spark. That night I lay in bed, phone buzzing with messages from Savannah about her backup outfits in case of champagne spills. But my mind was elsewhere, on the golden lawn of Meadowlark House, on the string lights, on the wildflowers. They thought they'd built their perfect day on a foundation they'd stolen from me. Tomorrow the cracks would start to show. And by the time the wedding day came, the whole facade would be see-through. Meadowlark House looked like a magazine spread the morning of the rehearsal. The wildflower arch was half-assembled on the western lawn, a skeleton of willow branches and blooms waiting to be wired in. Strings of lights lay coiled in neat loops on the grass, ready to climb the poplars. From the second-floor balcony, you could see the catering team setting long tables in the reception tent. White linens, pale green runners, little jars of honey at each place. All of it was mine. Savannah's text came through as I pulled into the gravel lot. Band is here. Baker's inside. Rowan's unloading the entry arrangement now. Another ping a moment later. Henry's got eyes on her. She's in full queen bee mode. No ID you're coming. Perfect. I walked in through the side gate, a tote bag over my shoulder, moving like I belonged there. Technically, I still did. The last time I'd stood on this lawn, Claire had walked me through my own ceremony layout. And now she was the first to spot me stepping out from behind a clipboard. Ava, she said, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she smoothed it into neutrality. Didn't expect you. I'm just here to say hello to a few people, I said, keeping my tone easy. And to make sure that credit line you promised is in place. It is, she said. Everywhere you asked. Good, I said and meant it. Inside the tent, the florist team was bent over the entry arrangement. A lush explosion of dahlias, lisianthus, and those tiny white blooms that look like stardust. And right there, printed on the discreet placard at the base. Original arrangement concept by Ava Morgan. Rowan caught my eye and winked. I didn't need to say anything. The placement was perfect. Exactly where arriving guests would pause to admire the flowers and maybe snap a photo. Next, I ducked into the reception space where Betty was fussing over a 3-tiered dummy cake for the layout. She waved me over like we were old friends. Look, we laminated it. And there it was. My wildflower sketch mounted beside the cake display. Bright. Clear. Unmissable. Celine's maid of honor was in the corner with a clipboard, glancing between the sketch and the cake. Her brow furrowed just enough to tell me she'd noticed the name under the drawing. From outside, the faint sound of instruments warming up drifted in. Guitar, strings, a slow count-off. I stepped back into the sunlight to see Theo and the band running through their set. When they spotted me, Theo gave the smallest nod like we were soldiers recognizing each other across enemy lines. Savannah sidled up beside me, sunglasses on, voice low. You're causing ripples. People are asking questions. Good, I murmured. We're not here to shout. Just to make the whispers loud enough to hear. The actual rehearsal was scheduled for 3 p.m., so I kept out of sight when the main party arrived. From behind the garden trellis, I watched them spill onto the lawn. Evan in a navy suit, Celine in a white sundress that was trying very hard to be casual. Her laugh was high and brittle, the kind she used when she was trying to signal control. Henry caught my eye from across the lawn, then turned back to her, asking some innocuous question that made her gesture toward the arch. She walked over to inspect it, adjusting a bloom here, tilting her head there. That's when one of the junior florists piped up just loud enough. Rowan said this was part of Ava Morgan's original ceremony plan. Pretty, right? Celine froze for half a second before smoothing her expression. Oh yes. Ava has interesting taste. The girl smiled, oblivious. She does. We're using her exact layout. It was a small moment. Barely a ripple in the air. But I saw the guests nearby, 2 of Evan's cousins, a groomsman's girlfriend, exchange curious glances. The seed was planted. As the afternoon went on, more little moments bloomed. Theo, testing the mic, casually mentioned, and here's the first dance choice. originally requested by Ava Morgan for this date. Fun fact. Betty walked past with the cake topper in hand, chatting to the caterer about how this design was inspired by Ava's wildflower board. Rowan offered the maid of honor a sprig of rosemary for her hair, adding, "Ava always said it was for remembrance." Each time I watched Celine's posture stiffen just slightly, her smile stretch thinner. By the time rehearsal wrapped, the questions had started. Not to me, of course. I was still the shadow at the edge of the frame. But I could see people asking Henry, the maid of honor, even Claire. And the answers, vague as they were, kept circling back to the same point. Why was Ava Morgan's name on so many pieces of this wedding? As the bridal party drifted toward the tent for champagne, I stepped into the open, finally letting her see me. Her eyes locked on mine across the lawn, a flash of something sharp and almost panicked passing over her face before she smoothed it away. I smiled, small, polite, lethal, and walked toward her with all the time in the world. Tomorrow, I thought, she'll wonder if today was the beginning of the end. And she'll be right. The morning of the wedding broke hot and clear, the kind of August day that made silk stick to skin and tempers fray by noon. Perfect weather for a little unraveling. Savannah picked me up at 10, iced coffee in one hand, sunglasses shielding a smirk. "Ready?" I sipped my drink and smiled. "They aren't. We didn't go straight to Meadowlark House. That would have been too obvious. Instead, we stopped at the bakery first." Betty greeted us like conspirators, pressing a small box into my hands. Inside was a single lemon rosemary cupcake, crowned with a pressed wildflower and a note, "For the architect." From there we swung by Posy and Thread, where Rowan handed me a tiny nosegay, rosemary, lavender, and a single wild daisy. "Something to hold," she said. "Not to throw." By the time we reached Meadowlark, the parking lot was full and the air hummed with the nervous energy of 100 people trying to execute someone else's vision perfectly. Henry was waiting for us at the side entrance. He looked almost too calm in his tailored suit, but his eyes flicked toward the tent and then back to me. "She's already on edge," he murmured. "One of Evan's aunts asked her point blank why your name is all over the vendor's materials." She laughed it off, but he made a small motion with his fingers, cracks forming. I glanced toward the tent. Through the flutter of white drapes, I could see the reception tables. Every runner, every centerpiece, every tiny honey jar exactly as I'd once planned. My plan. And at the far end, the cake, 3 tiers, wildflowers frozen in sugar, my laminated sketch standing like a signature at its base. The ceremony itself was set for 4. By 3:30, the guests were being herded to the lawn. Savannah and I slipped into the back row, our seats generously provided by Claire after I'd asked if the ceremony was open to the public grounds. The music began, Theo's band, smooth and rich. He caught my eye as the wedding party started down the aisle, and right on cue he spoke into the mic. "Our couple's first dance today will be to Sunset Waltz, a song first chosen for this date by its original requester, Ava Morgan. Some days just stick in the calendar, folks." A few heads turned. I didn't move. Then Celine appeared. Her dress was simple, elegant, and, unsurprisingly, eerily close to the one I'd pinned to my original mood board months ago. She walked down the aisle with that tight smile she wore when she was daring the world to challenge her. From the corner of my eye, I saw Evan's gaze flick over the guests and land on me. His stride faltered for just half a beat. "Good. Let him sweat." The officiant began. Vows were exchanged, or rather vows were read. And there it was, my voice in hers. Word for word, down to the parenthetical aside about sunlight catching the edges of a life we're still building. I let her finish. I even clapped with the rest. Then Theo struck up the recessional and the crowd funneled toward the tent for cocktails. Inside, the air conditioning hit like a blessing, but the atmosphere was already shifting. Guests lingered by the entry arrangement, murmuring over the placard. A cluster gathered at the cake display, pointing at the laminated sketch. Rowan's rosemary sprigs adorned every napkin, and more than one guest was tucking them into pockets or hair. By the time the band launched into the first dance, the whispers were full sentences. "Didn't Ava design this? Isn't she the one who picked the music?" I heard those were her vows. And then the opening chords of Sunset Waltz. Theo took the mic, a beautiful choice, originally planned for this very date by Ava Morgan. Some inspiration never fades. The dance began. Celine's smile was fixed, her eyes scanning the room for the source of the murmurs she couldn't control. Evan's jaw was tight, his hands stiff at her waist. Halfway through, a woman near the cake table raised her voice just enough for the circle around her to hear. It's like they built this whole thing out of her scraps. The laughter that followed was small, sharp, and impossible to contain. I didn't need to stay for the implosion. I slipped out through the side of the tent, past the hydrangeas, into the gold light of late afternoon. Behind me the music played on, but the sound was thinner now, frayed at the edges. Savannah caught up to me in the parking lot, her grin wicked. They're going to be explaining themselves all night. Good, I said, unlocking the car. Let them. The best part? I didn't take a thing from them. She raised a brow. They took from me, I said. All I did was make sure everyone saw the tag. As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of Meadowlark House in the rearview mirror. The wildflower arch glowing in the sun, beautiful and unshakably mine. And for the first time in months I didn't feel the loss of that day. I felt the gain of everything that came after. 3 weeks after the wedding, a cream-colored envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in neat, expensive calligraphy. Inside was a single photo. Celine and Evan mid-first dance, frozen under the string lights. But not the romantic magazine-worthy shot she'd probably wanted. This was taken from the side, the laminated wildflower sketch in full view right behind them, my name printed clear enough to read. No note. No explanation. Just the image, like someone wanted me to remember exactly how the day looked when the whispers got louder than the music. I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk. A trophy. I'd spoken to Evan exactly once since that afternoon. He called a week later, his voice a mix of embarrassment and self-defense. I didn't know it would all blow up like that, he said. I sipped my coffee. You didn't know because you never bothered to imagine what it would feel like to be me. He was silent for a long beat. So that's it. That's it, I said. No shouting. No rehashing. Just a quiet, clean cut. Henry's message came not long after. Called off the honeymoon. Considering calling off the marriage. I typed back. Do what you need to do. You've seen the foundation. He replied, thank you for not letting me be the last to know who I married. We haven't spoken since, but every now and then I wonder if he kept the pressed rosemary sprig I saw tucked into his pocket before the ceremony started. Life moved fast after that. Betty asked if she could feature my wildflower sketch in her spring catalog. Rowan booked me to consult on a rustic luxe wedding in Vermont. Her words, not mine. Theo's band invited me to help design their new promo aesthetic, claiming I had an ear for visuals. It was almost absurd watching all these threads spin into something new, something that belonged entirely to me. Savannah kept calling it the reclamation tour. I just called it work. Good work. One late September afternoon, I drove up to the vacation house I'd nearly bought for Evan and me. This time there was no us to consider. The porch needed paint, the dock needed sanding, but the lake shimmered like it had been waiting for me. I spent the weekend unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, hanging framed photos of places and people that made me feel more me. No wedding portraits. No echoes of someone else's dream. On Sunday night I sat on the deck with a glass of wine, the air turning crisp. The sun slid low over the water, washing everything in gold. For the first time in a long while, there was no tightness in my chest. No gnawing sense that I was fighting to keep what was mine. I'd stopped fighting. I'd started choosing. The last thing I did before heading inside was open my laptop and click send on a proposal I'd been working on for weeks. A boutique creative consultancy for event design. Not weddings, at least not exclusively. Just beautiful moments built honestly from the ground up. I named it True North Concepts. Because I'd learned something standing on the edges of other people's borrowed visions. If you don't set your own compass, someone else will hand you theirs, and tell you it was your idea all along. As the email whooshed out into the world, I caught my reflection in the dark window. Not the Ava who'd been gutted at a dinner table, not the Ava who'd watched her best friend walk down her aisle. This Ava looked steady. Certain. Already halfway to wherever she wanted to go next. The phone buzzed on the table. A text from Savannah. To new beginnings. I typed back. To my own story. And for once I didn't just mean the ending. I meant every page ahead.